Our speaker is compatriot Jerry Pinkerton. Jerry graduated from the University of North Texas in 1962. He has been a CPA for over 50 years. His professional career includes 26 years as an auditor with what is now Duluth and Twitch. 15 years as controller and consultant with the TXU Corporation and an acquired company, and 14 years that just ended last month as chairman of the audit committee of the board of directors of 3 publicly traded companies. Now you're retired. Jerry has been married to Judy Morgan for 56 years. They have 3 daughters, 9 grandchildren, and Judy is here today. Jerry has 3 proven patriots of the American Revolution. Mary Sandwich Folsom from Virginia, who provided supplies to the troops. John Einzer, who was a soldier in the North Carolina line. And Alicia Garland, who has also served the North Carolina line as a private and participated in the battles of Brandywine, Germantown, Monmouth, and Guilford Courthouse. And Jerry, your patriot, and mine fought in the same battles. I thought that was a real coincidence. Jerry has been an SAR member since 2012, and he currently serves in his 2nd year as our chapter's registrar. He stepped in for Jerry Brown, who moved up to the state level, and we thank you for that service. Jerry is the son of Ralph Pinkerton and Claudel Stewart, both born in 1919. They married in 1937 during the Great Depression. Jerry was born in 1940 and his sister Judy in 1943. Ralph, his father, was killed in action in 1945 in the Pacific War against the Japanese. He is the subject of today's presentation. Jerry was 4 years old the last time he saw his father, and almost 5 when the telegram was received that Ralph had been killed in action. About 20 years ago, Jerry began a search for information about his father. Over the next several years, Jerry met and interviewed 5 members of his father's Army unit that served with him, and most were involved with the action against the Japanese on the day he was killed. One man in particular, Edwin Dwyer, had written his memoirs of serving in World War II. Mr. Dyer had served with Ralph, his father, from the time he boarded the ship in San Francisco to go to Leyte, and then to the landing beach in Mindanao, and then to the action where Ralph was killed. Mr. Dyer's book, augmented by Ralph's military records and interviews with men that served with him, provided the historical reference of Ralph's military experience, and the interviews with his mother and other close family members provided Ralph's personal background information. Jerry visited his father's grave in Manila Army Cemetery in the Philippines in 2007 and 2012. In 2012, Edwin Dyer and he and a guide followed the route on the island of Mindanao from the beach where the unit landed on May 10, 1945, to the village, and I hope I pronounced this right, Calbangules. I missed it, but you'll get it, I'm sure. Where Ralph was killed in action while manning his machine gun on June 14, 1945. Armed with this information, Jerry published a book in 2014 intended primarily for his family, children, and grandchildren about the life of Ralph Pinkerton, and it was entitled, My Father, More Than a Picture, a Bottle of Beer, and a Flag. Today, Jerry will speak to us as if his father was telling his own story. Jerry?
Before I start, we have some PowerPoint slides, but they're not showing up too well. You might, if you want to see the slides, you might need to reorient over to this side a little bit and try that. And I'm sure that Deloitte and Touche will forgive you for that name that you put on them. But
okay.
And it is Cabang Lassane.
Of course it is.
Okay. Well, yeah. Some of it.
Monty, where were you when I needed you?
Okay. I am PFC Ralph Pinkerton. Today, June 14, 1945, I'm halfway around the world. in the Philippines, bivouacked near the small village of Cabanglasan. My unit is 4th Platoon of I Company, 3rd Battalion of the 108th Infantry Regiment. We are the weapons platoon. We have 2 30 caliber machine guns and 3 60 millimeter mortars that support our rifle platoons. I'm in charge of one of our machine guns. At 26, I'm one of the older guys in the unit. Other than our officers and our sergeants, the rest of the troops are 18 or 19-year-old who joined up or were drafted right after high school. On May 10th, we landed on the north side of Mindanao. It was a routine amphibious landing. The Japanese did not offer much resistance. Our job was to clear out the remaining Jap forces in the northern part of the island and join up with the 31st Division that was fighting up from the south. We fought our way south, and on May 12, we captured the Del Monte airfield. This is the place from which General MacArthur left for Australia in 1942, and his PT boat escaped after his PT boat escaped from Corrector. The next day, we ran into strong opposition at Manima Canyon, and we were involved in heavy fighting for several days. On May 18th, we captured what we called Purple Heart Canyon because we had had so many wounded there, and we continued on down south. We joined up with elements of the 31st Division near Malay on May 23, and after that we had several days to rest and recuperate. On June 6, our battalion received orders to relieve units of the 124th Regiment up in the mountains east of us. At the same time, it began to rain pretty heavy. We drew 3 days K rations, put on our ponchos, and started up a trail east toward the mountains. After some R&R, we were back in the war again. On June 11, we got to our destination, a very large clearing in the heavy forest not far from the Boganawan River. We set up our perimeter, and the next day patrols started going out in different directions. We knew the Japs were out there, but we're hopeful we wouldn't get involved in any kind of major battle, because we didn't have any backup and our artillery was out of range. K Company got the job of continuing down the trail the next day. They went about 5 miles, and then they ran into an ambush. They were in a serious firefight and had to fall back. They suffered several wounded and had 1 soldier killed. But because of the heavy fire from the Japanese, they couldn't recover his body. They were pretty worked up when they got back to camp. When the K Company patrol came out of the woods, one of our outpost guards saw them and waved at them. A K Company man saw our guys and he started yelling, "Japs, Japs!" And they started firing at our men. They hit all 5 of our I Company men before an officer was able to stop them. We had 2 men killed and 3 wounded, including 1 seriously wounded in this friendly fire incident. It's hell to suffer casualties of any kind, but especially from your troops. Today, our company is going out to retrieve the K Company KIA and bring me back. I hope the Japs didn't mutilate his body as we've seen sometimes. We were up at about 0600 hours. My breakfast was a K ration tin of scrambled eggs with bacon bits. I mixed a small pack of instant coffee in my canteen cup with some water and heated it by burning the K ration box. After finishing the hot coffee, I had a smoke and then filled my 2 canteens with water from the nearby stream. I added 2 water purification tablets to each canteen. They make the water taste funny even when you make coffee with it. Our last hot meal was over a week ago when we started out on this mission, which will be over in a few more days. I have the brasses okay to transfer to the cooks when we get back. I'm sure Claudel will be real happy when I get out of harm's way. I've been thinking a lot the last few days about how I came to be here on this hot, steamy, rainy, muddy island that only God knows how far it is to be down. It's been almost 8 months since I saw my wife and kids and kinfolks. It's been months since I've heard anything about my brothers. Raymond is in the Marines, Ed Jr. is in the Navy. All I know is that they're in the Pacific somewhere. I hope they're well. I'll be so glad when this war is over and I get home to Texas to see my family again. I was born and raised in Newcastle and lived most of my life around there until I was drafted. Newcastle is a small town in north central Texas. It's about 100 miles west of Fort Worth. I attended public school there and completed the 7 elementary grades at a part year of high school before I dropped out at age 14. After I quit school, I started working odd jobs for spending money. When I got to be 16, I got my driver's license so I could drive Dad's truck and the family car. Claudel Stewart and I were 18 when we married in December 1937, which was in the middle of the Depression. I worked at any kind of job I could find. In the fall, I picked cotton. I worked for a while in a coal mine where Dad had worked, and I worked some as a carpenter's helper. I drove Dad's truck and would haul anything that anybody needed hauling. Claudel and my first child was stillborn in October 1938. Jerry Wayne was born in July 1940, and Judy Carolyn was born in February 1943. On December the 7th, 1941, we had just finished eating Sunday dinner and turned on the radio when we heard that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. Claudel was scared, and we talked a lot about what that might mean. The next day, we listened to President Roosevelt's speech on the radio about a day that will live in infamy. Jobs picked up after Pearl Harbor. In 1943, I was hired at Consolidated Aircraft in Fort Worth as a riveter building B-24 airplanes. I worked there until I got drafted. I arrived at Camp Wolters to start my basic training on June the 9th of 1944. Camp Wolters is a large infantry replacement training center in Mineral Wells, Texas. I signed up for the government life insurance of $10,000 to provide Claudel and the kids with some money in case something happened. We were put through several days of processing, getting uniforms, shots, etc., and the training started. Since I was going to be in the infantry, I knew I needed to learn everything possible about my new job to increase my chances of surviving the war and getting back to my family. Just before we finished basic training, we heard that General MacArthur had landed troops at Leyte in the Philippines. They showed us on a big world map where the Philippines are and where the landing had been. I got a short furlough after my basic training. We decided it would be a good idea to have a family picture made. After a few days of visiting with family and friends, Claudel and the kids drove me to Fort Worth, where I caught the train to Fort Ord, California. Judy and Jerry were crying the last time I saw them. I arrived at Fort Ord on November 8th and was there for 3 weeks to get more advanced training. Then we were sent by train to Camp Stoneman, which is across the bay from San Francisco. Shortly after I arrived at Camp Stoneman, I had severe back kidney pain and was in the hospital for several weeks. They did all kinds of tests and x-rays and blood work. My mail finally caught up with me right after I went to the hospital. I was in the hospital on Christmas and New Year's Day. I missed seeing Jerry and Judy play with the Christmas toys. I got pretty bored while I was recovering. I read everything that there was to read and I played rummy almost all the time. There was a radio in the hospital ward and we kept it on all the time. We listened to the Rose Bowl game on January the 1st, 1945. I wondered where I would be next New Year's. And I listened to another Rose Bowl game. Right after New Year's, I got the Christmas packages from my wife and my mother that I had been expecting. On January the 21st, they determined my condition was not serious and discharged me from the hospital. Right after that, I got orders to ship out in early February. We left Camp Stoneman on February the 6th and loaded on a ferry to take us to Pier 15 in San Francisco. We loaded onto the U.S. Army transport Snipe, a Liberty ship that had been converted to carry troops. The officers had cabins on the top side, and we enlisted when the cargo was open. We had bunks about 8 high. The bunks were so close together you couldn't sit up. We left the dock just before dark and made our way through the harbor past Alcatraz, where Al Capone and other big-time gangsters had been sent. Then we passed under the Golden Gate Bridge. We didn't know where we were going. All we knew was that it was somewhere in the Pacific. At first the weather was cold and the seas were a little rough, and a lot of the guys got seasick. We had to take a life jacket with us each time we went on deck, and every day we had a lifeboat drill. We got hot meals for breakfast and supper, and a sandwich and sometimes fresh fruit at noon. To get our food, we enlisted men walked in 2 lines through the kitchen. We helped out of mess kits and were served without slowing down. It was an efficient way to feed the 2,200 men on board. The sea snipe is heavily armed. It has guns sticking out at every angle. It looks like it could fight its way through a lot of opposition. There are hundreds of rafts, life rafts on the decks, in addition to the lifeboats that are ready to be thrown into the sea if we need to abandon ship. The route took us south of Hawaii. By the 4th day, the weather was warm and the seas were calm. Everyone was getting bored, and poker and crap games were going on almost all the time. After about 10 days, we crossed the equator. We were told that it is an old sea custom that all first-timers have to be initiated into King Neptune's court. The ship's crew and about every 100 enlisted men were chosen for gentle hazing and got their heads shaved. They were initiated by being soaked from the fire hoses, and then they turned the fire hoses on the rest of us. 2 days later, we crossed the international date line. Every now and then, dolphins would swim alongside us for hours at a time. We had a submarine scare on the morning of February 16th, and we zigzagged all day. No lights were allowed that night. The first land we saw after San Francisco was Guadalcanal. I had heard about this island back in 1942. It was the first time we had taken some islands back from the Japs. Then on February 23, we reached our first port of call, Pinkerton, New Guinea. It's just thick jungles and high mountains with rain clouds all around it. It looks like the place that big ape King Kong might live. Next, we arrived at Hollandia, New Guinea, and joined the convoy that was being formed. It consisted of about 20 ships. There were escort destroyers, supply ships, navy tugs, a hospital ship, and other troop ships, and they were spread out all over. On March 4th, we reached our destination, the 4th replacement depot in Tacloban Lake in the Philippines. This is the island where last October, General MacArthur's troop first landed to liberate the Philippines. Our voyage was nearly 9,000 miles. It lasted almost a month. After 10 days, we got our shipping order, and we were loaded onto Navy LSTs and LSMs and left for Ormoc on the west side of the lake. Our route took us around the southern side and about halfway up the west side. There were almost 2,000 of us, so it took a small convoy of ships to carry us all. We went through the Lady Gulf, where the Navy had the big sea battle last October. After reaching Ormoc, we were assigned to the 108th Infantry Regiment of the 40th Division. The 3 regiments of the 40th Divisions had been part of the invasion of Luzon in January. After about a month of combat, they were given a rest. Over 1,000 experienced soldiers from the 108th Regiment were transferred to the other 2 40th Division regiments to bring them up to strength. Then the 108th was sent to Ormoc to be re-outfitted and get reinforcements. We got off the ships, we were called into formation and given our assignments. I was assigned to I Company, which is part of the 3rd Battalion. We were trucked to the company area, and all we found were a few tents, a few officers, and some NCOs. We were immediately assigned to platoons and squads. I was assigned to the 4th platoon and one of the 2 machine gun squads. The platoon also had 3 mortar squads. All of us were issued a Colt 45 automatic handgun for personal protection since we couldn't carry a rifle in our heavy weapons. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd platoons are rifle platoons, with 3 12-man squads plus NCOs and a lieutenant. Rifle platoon squads had M1s, 1 or 2 BARs, and the platoon sergeant had a Tommy gun. The Japs mostly had bolt-action rifles and not many automatic weapons, so a rifle platoon had a lot more firepower than the Japs did. After a week in Ormont, we were ready for our first mission. The regiment was split into its 3 battalions and scattered up and down the coast. Our 3rd battalion consists of companies I, K, L, and M. The 108th had about 1,000 new troops that were untested in battle. Our NCO told us that we would be doing our advanced training, but reminded us that our targets would shoot back. The Japs slept on Lady had been hiding in the jungle and were almost out of food and supplies. Our troops had control of the forts, so they couldn't get any supplies by sea. They had started raiding villages and ambushing army convoys. Our job was to search out and destroy the best soldiers, the Jap soldiers that were left. When we went out on patrol, we took 9 boxes of K rations, 3 for each day. Each box was a little bigger than a Cracker Jack box. The contents were sealed in a waterproof wax box, which was then placed inside a cardboard box with printing on it to identify it as either breakfast, dinner, or supper. When we were indoctrinated upon assignment to the unit, it was carefully explained to us that we do not take prisoners. The Japanese did not ratify the Geneva Convention, and they did not believe in taking prisoners. We knew that they had killed many prisoners at the Bataan, Death March, and throughout the war. By the end of April, we had found most all of the enemy strong points. Our unit was relieved by the 1st Philippine Infantry, and we moved back to the Yapa. They told us that the regiment had killed 1,007 of the enemy, while we suffered 15 KIAs. Some of those killed on Lazy were from our battalion. We quietly watched as the men were cleaned up and wrapped in their shelter hats and buried in shallow graves. A small wooden marker was placed on the grave. The location of the grave was marked on the map so that the fallen men could be found when the recovery teams came to move them to the military cemetery. The company commander conducted a short service in which he honored the fallen men and read passages from the Bible. Afterwards, we thought about these men, wondered about the families they left behind. Were they married? They had children and no longer had a father. We knew there would be a lot of grieving somewhere back home when their family gets word that they're dead. On May 1, all of us privates were promoted to PFC. We got our first strike and first pay raise. Also, as of May 1, we were told we'd been awarded our combat infantryman's badge. Then the regiment was transported back to Ormont, where we spent the time cleaning and repairing our equipment and drawing supplies for the previous landing. On the afternoon of May 9, we loaded onto about 40 ships to take us to Mindanao. We arrived at Mindanao just after daylight on May 10. 9 sweepers had cleared the area before the landing. Philippine guerrillas controlled the landing zone, and very few of the troops were expected near the beach. Prior to the landing, destroyers had bombarded the ship. Our 3rd battalion was the 3rd wave of troops to land. The 1st wave hit the beach with no opposition about 08:30. The 2nd wave was right behind it. About 09:30, our LCI beached, and we walked down the ramps in the shallow water. The Ormont group had been together for 2 months now, and we thought it enough to be pretty good. The Japs had decided not to defend the landing. The only opposition had been a few ragged volleys of rifle fire, which the 1st units on shore quickly took care of. All of us were pretty loaded down with supplies. The riflemen carried about 30 8-round clips of M1 ammo and 6 hand grenades. The machine gun and mortar squads also carried a lot of extra ammo. We were supposed to have a 3-day supply of everything. After capturing the Del Monte airfield and Manima Canyon, we continued south and joined the elements of the 31st Division.
After that, we had several days of R&R, some hot chow, and hunter mail. Then on June 6th, our 3rd Battalion received its orders to relieve units of the 124th. We met the 1st Company of the 124th Regiment coming out and stopped for a short time to get information from them. They had only about 75 men, which is about 100 men short of authorized strength. We were down to 150. We thought that was bad enough. We were in the mountains, some 20 to 30 miles east of Malay. Mindanao is mostly unpopulated out here. There's no road system to speak of off the main Sayre Highway. The area is heavily forested. We walked all the way single file of small trails that were not even wide enough for a Jeep to drive on. We forded waist-deep rivers and it rained almost every day. But about every 3rd day we'd have to find a clearing between the mountains that would be large enough for an air drop. We would mark the drop zone, then a C-47 flew over, and each pass they would shove out a pallet full of supplies without parachutes. Usually it was ammo and K-rations for the company for 3 days. Once a box of grenades was dropped and shattered when it hit the ground. The cotter pins came out and grenades exploded all over and everybody ended up for cover. We saw another unusual sight. The 124th had a Jap prisoner they were bringing out. One of our guys yelled at the prisoner, "When you get back to Tokyo, you tell Hojo we're going to come to get that SOB." The prisoner answered in perfect English, "You will probably get there before I do. I do, so you tell him yourself." The prisoner was an American-born Japanese who had gone to Japan just before Pearl Harbor to visit his relatives. He was drafted into the Japanese army, and because of his good English, he was serving as an interpreter. He had graduated from UCLA, and his family still lived in the LA area. We had no trouble getting to the spot where K Company had been ambushed. They found the KIA and put him on a stretcher to take back. In the meantime, our forward scouts had moved off the trail for a short distance, and they came to an opening of a large clearing. They stopped and tried to see what they could do without exposing themselves to enemy fire. The SEAL must have given some thought about moving out a little more. We had not been fired on, and no one could observe any of the troops. Our company commander sent orders back to send the 2 machine guns to the front to furnish covering fire for any further advancement. So Watsky and I took our gun, tripod, and ammo and moved up to the tree line on the right side and set up our weapons in the best cover we could find. Everything was as quiet as it could be, but we were sure there was Japs around there somewhere. All of a sudden, all hell broke loose. We began receiving fire from multiple Jap machine guns, and mortar shells started raining down on us. I immediately started firing the machine gun. The forward riflemen and those behind us jumped off for what cover they could find. Some got to a small ravine, but most were flat on the ground. The trees were higher than utility poles, so the mortar shells were hitting them and exploding high enough in the trees to hold down danger from them. The Jap machine guns were giving back and forth traversing fire about 3 feet off the ground, which was keeping the riflemen on the ground, and they could only move around by crawling. The riflemen were returning fire as best they could. The Jap bullets were flying all around. Watsky and I were in an exposed position, but we kept sweeping the area with machine gun fire at any muzzle blast, hoping to take out the Jap machine guns and as many other Japs as we could. Lieutenant Allen was up front. We heard him over the gunfire giving orders to pull back. We kept firing to cover the men as they pulled back. Then I heard Watsky yell, "I'm hit," and he let out a groan. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see he was slumped over, bleeding profusely and not moving. I had been hit too, but was able to keep firing. Then I felt a burning sensation all over my body. So that is how my dad was killed. June 14, 1945. He is buried in the Manila American Cemetery with about 17,200 others that died in the Pacific region. And there are over 36,000 names. They are also on tablets of the missing. Thank you.
difficult as that was for you to do to tell that story, it's a beautiful story, and it's well written. And it sounded like your dad. We'd like to thank you.
Let's go around the front.
Right here. We certainly like to thank you for the effort you put into this and telling us such a moving story. And usually we give away the little guy, but I think this is more suited for someone who tells a story like that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have, if you didn't notice, I have put pictures of, well, of the memorabilia there. One is my father's picture, one is the flag that was draped over his coffin in Manila when he was buried in and the one in the middle is a beer bottle. It has a story about it, about it's a linking on it. I know from probably that the person that found it was there when my dad drinking in 1944 before he left. And he threw these in the bushes and went back on the old farm one day and found these. And so that's Ralph's beer bottle that he drank from in 1944. I got it in 2005.